The year is 2012. You and your friends are walking out of the first Hunger Games movie while doing some cringy but relevant dance and screaming YOLO. But it's not all good news. You're living in pure fear because your last 6 brain cells believe that you only have a couple more months until the end of the world. But there's a nugget of positivity to your doomed life. Diablo III just released and Nick Jonas just took off his purity ring. At the time of Diablo III's release, it had been about 11 years since the last game of the series, and fans were overhyped, but for some they felt they'd have to wait a little bit longer before they could get a real successor to Diablo II after playing Diablo III at launch.
Surprise, bitch!
Diablo IV is one of my most anticipated games of the last couple years, but let's take a look at the things that Diablo III got right and why it's still very much so alive today, and how Diablo IV can take what Diablo III did right and run with it. See, I usually break down these videos into aspects of what makes a game most interesting to me. So the story, the loot, and the combat. The story on Diablo II was nothing special back then, but it hit different and it took what Diablo 1 had created and did it bigger and better. It can be argued that the story isn't and hasn't ever really been the strongest point of any Diablo game. And the story of Diablo III does have a fantastic start. In my opinion, it's a very memorable and strong narrative start that, like most Blizzard games, it falls off towards the end of Act 1 and slightly picks back up in the last act before immediately falling off again. But, you know, it's like a trap. You're invested and you can't back out now. Don't get me wrong though, there are moments that make you feel like a badass and the game definitely hypes you up. And for most Diablo fans, the story isn't the biggest issue with the game. I managed to play through the story about 40 or 50 times now since launch, which exposes me as a total cuck, and now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm not proud. But you can easily tune out and focus on what Diablo is really about. In this case, the best thing Diablo IV can do is completely reconstruct the story act structure of the series that hasn't exactly been very strong since Diablo II, and take notes from the Reaper of Souls DLC, which introduced new modes like adding in adventure mode right out of the gate. Diablo 3 was fun and the DLC was a step in the right direction, but many players felt that it didn't come close to the story and lore building that the first 2 games had introduced. Now, Diablo 2, as I mentioned earlier, isn't a perfect game, but it's still praised for how it executed its story, introduced characters, and had spooky dialogue. However, the first trailer of Diablo 4 that Blizzard released a couple years ago does give me hope, just in the way that they're taking a different approach to how the story will be told, and instead of stupid sexy Diablo, we're getting a stupid sexy tall Lillith. And we all know what stupid sexy tall ladies in video games did for Resident Evil 8.
Meat sucky sucky now, mommy.
I said it before in one of my other videos, and I'll say it again, I am a loot whore. It's a problem, I've been to meetings. But if you look up synonyms for Diablo, the first definition you get is Spanish for devil, and also like a couple recipes for salsa Diablo. But if you look right below that, you'll see in big meme text, Diablo synonyms, loot. Diablo 3 hits the spot for me with its RNG loot system, but that was only after a while. When the game first launched, you would get a lot of useless gear, and it took the fun out of the game, but the devs even to this day have worked on the loot in a way where it can be fun. And RNG can still kick your ass, but those true brain-dead grinders like me out there know what I mean when I say that it's worth it. Now, for those math heads and college professors out there or whatever, let me explain this in a complicated way that you'll definitely understand. Diablo 3's loot system is basically you get 40 or 45 items an hour and 90% of it is crap. Here's a formula in case that doesn't make any sense. Now, Diablo 4, listen. Literally all you have to do, and this is so simple, is take that formula, take that 40, drop it down to let's say 30, and boom, you're in the Hall of Fame, my guy. We have given you the formula. You can't mess this up. The combat in Diablo 3 is proof that the devs haven't been sitting on their ass since Diablo 1. And the combat and the loot system are, at their core, what Diablo fans are Diablo fans for. The games have put the ARPG genre on the map, and many games today wouldn't be around if it weren't for the innovations that Blizzard brought to the table with the Diablo series. Diablo 3 was no exception to that. The loot and the combat are complements to each other and were the driving force behind what this game is, and why playing through it so many times was an addicting experience for me and many other fans. And it's also why I still pop back in after all these years. As I mentioned earlier, the addition of the adventure mode in Diablo 3 and seasons are what, in my opinion, saved the game for a lot of people, me included. When I was finally tired of running the story over and over again, it's adventure mode that kept me coming back. Now, Blizzard already has the formula to recreate the infinitely endless gameplay loop that Diablo 3 has almost perfected, and the progress from 3 gives me hope that this part of Diablo 4 will be the least of their problems at launch. Now, Diablo 3 has been out for almost 11 years, as long as it was between Diablo 2 and Diablo 3, but if you still have yet to play 3, then I say the game is in a great spot, and there's a reason why it's still alive today, especially with its seasons and developer support. But if you haven't played Diablo 3 in a while and its expansions for a couple seasons, then honestly, you're not missing much, but feel free to hop on the Diablo 4 hype train with the rest of us. In fact, comment down below what you think Diablo 4 needs to be the best in the series. Also, be sure to like and subscribe to keep up to date on new content and help support the channel.